I don't think someone has to be as educated as I am for me to marry them. I do have to feel like they have some common sense, because let me tell you, I can't date somebody who is making stupid decisions. Welcome back to another episode of The House and Words and Means. Tonight we are going to be talking a little bit about being unequally yoked. So what does it even mean? And when you're dating, how do you even navigate these waters? So how would you even define being unequally yoked?
Well, we've stated many times on this channel, we're Christian. And I think that the concept of being unequally yoked is something that comes from the Bible, the Christian Bible. And I mean, I think when it's typically mentioned, it's kind of talking about people of different belief systems, different faiths. But I mean, I do think that it's much broader than that. So even if you're not a person of faith, you can be unequally yoked with someone just based on, and this is a term we brought up a couple of videos back, where we were talking about the idea of the one. Maybe you saw that, we can link it in this video. But we talked about foundational issues, foundational beliefs that you have. I think that any time that you're in a relationship with someone who runs afoul of whatever your foundational beliefs are, those are things that are really core and fundamental to you and who you are, then you're unequally yoked. So that's the way I define it. Do you have anything to add to that, or a different sentiment?
I do also want to add that sometimes status, which isn't quite a foundational thing, status could, in some ways, or maybe even your perspective of status, can be considered, a way to determine whether you're unequally yoked or not. If I don't know if status is the best way to describe that. I know back in the days, people used to refer to it as class. Different class, as far as like societal classes that you could be in. That's probably a better way of describing it. Again, that's not a foundational thing. It's more of like a demographic thing.
I think that's something that, when we talk about whether somebody makes sense on paper, but I think that's more of an external factor, where it's like on the outside looking in. And you could say the same thing with education, probably.
Have you dated someone that you felt you were unequally yoked to?
Yeah.
Why?
Why? Because we had chemistry, and it felt right. The way that our relationship went, the way we got along, the way we felt when we were together. So I mean, I think, and I do think it was more so me viewing them as being unequally yoked with me based on the way I viewed it, where not necessarily it was viewed the same way the other way around. I don't know that she thought we were unequally yoked, but I was like, hey, yeah, we're unequally yoked.
Sometimes as women or men, we find ourselves in these relationships where we feel like, well, this person is perfect for us, but the person they don't have those same thoughts about us. So it's interesting that you were in a situation where you knew from the jump that it's unequally yoked. However, you entertained it because of chemistry, and you knew that she thought that you guys were, going places. Won't you think though that that's a little bit unfair?
Well, you could be going places even if you're unequally yoked.
Okay.
Because of my belief about the amount of, or the importance of the issue that made us unequally yoked, I didn't see a long-term future. So it was just kind of like a thing where this is fun while it lasts. I was also young. I mean, I wasn't really thinking about getting married or whatever. I mean, I was like 23, 24 when the situation started. So it wasn't like something that I really thought had long-term potential. It was just like a time and place kind of situation.
This is just, to me, there were different points in my life where I dated people who I felt like were unequally yoked. And I think one of those stages is when you're dating someone who you know is you're not truly compatible with, but you have that chemistry, and you start to do a bit of bargaining. For me, it was like, can I try to make this work, even though I know that this is something that may not work, kind of on paper, but maybe I could kind of finesse some things to make the situation work. So that's like a part of me and my unequally dating life. The other part of it is like, I'm just dating right now. I'm not looking for relationships. I'm just dating. So it doesn't matter who I'm really dating. And so it's okay if I'm unequally yoked in those moments. But there were times where when I was looking for something of substance, and I was just disinterested. If I met someone, I was dating them, and I realized that we were unequally yoked, I just wouldn't talk to them anymore. Like, hey, this is not going to work out.
Well, I do think that when you are making excuses or bargaining, that's a sign of either immaturity or desperation.
I can agree with that.
Sometimes when a person is desperate, not to say that that was you at all, but sometimes you'll see people who are desperate who will excuse a lot of things they shouldn't or otherwise wouldn't if they're like, I don't have a lot of other options. And I don't want to lose this, because if I lose this, it's going to be a long time in the desert before I find another option. And there's also, I say immaturity, because when you have enough experience, you know it's not worth it. Because a lot of times when you're early in a relationship, you have these rose-colored glasses on, and everything is great, and it feels so great that it's like, well, there can't ever be any problems. Even if there are, we'll fix them, right? And you make the very difficult things and parts of a relationship seem easy, because you're just like so caught up in this chemistry that you had, this newness that's going on, and it can cause you to make silly decisions if you rush in.
Or maybe not even so much rush in, because you mentioned immaturity or desperation. I wasn't desperate. This was very early in my dating life, so it was probably mostly immaturity. And while I feel like I was a very mature person when it came to like relationships, as you were talking about, I was thinking about it, I was like, I guess I was a bit immature, or my relationship, that specific relationship I'm thinking about will fall under the category of immaturity. And the relationship was fine. We didn't have any problems. Things were going well, but there were just some things that I just knew that would become an issue later on in the relationship. And I was just like, oh, well, maybe I can make this work. And I started thinking about the reasons why it was okay for it to work. It was, we had different religious beliefs. We had different views on tithing, to tithe or not to tithe. Tithing is where you give 10% of your income to the church for paying pastors or carrying on the mission of the church and things like that. And I strongly believed in tithing. And the guy I dated, he wasn't even affiliated with any particular church. And at the time that he and I dated, I was newly vegetarian as well. And so him being a health nut, he was like, oh, I could do that with you. Like, that's cool, we could do this together type thing. And it was fine. Again, like, and there were no like super red flags in the relationship, I mean, at that point, but in the long run, it would not have worked out. And I had a very similar situation post my I'm just dating just to date, so it doesn't matter who I'm dating phase. And that situation came up kind of immediately in a relationship that I was in, and I kind of like got rid of the relationship almost immediately. So, that came with some growth, with some emotional growth. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I think that we have to be honest with ourselves too. And I wonder, like, for a lot of the relationships, single black women that we have, if it's because we put ourselves in these positions where we are in unequally yoked relationships, and then we start bargaining as to why we should try to still make this relationship work when we know for a fact that it wouldn't work.
I mean, I think religion, like we talked about earlier, is probably a very typical way that people view being unequally yoked. I had a situation that I was in when I was also young, maybe even younger than the other situation I brought up, where we had very different views on money. She was really liked to uphold a kind of flashy lifestyle, and we were in school, but she was en route to having a very high-paying career, but I mean, she was already, spending all her money. And I always had kind of an eye to the future, saving, things like that. But I mean, and she had told me one thing that was a real red flag was that she told me her mother was kind of similar with her views on money, and her parents actually had split up over, I believe, I mean, there were a multitude of issues, but one of the big issues with her was her mother's spending habits. So I was like, this is not gonna work.
This dude, that would never work, y'all.
Another time, I do remember also there was a situation where there was kind of like that educational difference. Now, I think, when you are at different levels of educational attainment, it's not something that can't work.
I didn't think that would matter for you.
But I think that, hold on, I'm getting to, I think that as you go about life, you're around, as higher you go in your career, your education, you're just kind of around a more homogenous group of people.
Okay.
Some things fall off at different levels, and you end up around people who look more and more like you, as far as an educational standpoint, financial standpoint, whatever. But I mean, it wasn't a huge issue for me. It was my mother who brought it up. Now, at that time, I was like, she's just me. She doesn't like this. She doesn't like this girl. So she's just pulling all the stops. She's like, okay, well, because to me, the girl, yeah, we had very different educational levels, but it wasn't because I didn't find her very intelligent. It was just life situations that had stopped her progress. But I don't know that would be something long term. But my mother was relying on research and things like that, which I wasn't privy to at the time. So I mean, it could be that may lead to issues down the line. I don't know. I didn't know in that situation. I would have been fine going ahead. But I mean, I do think there's some wisdom in what's kind of established information that researchers has done. I just didn't read too much into it. The situation didn't go that far.
That's interesting. I've never really thought about the educational piece. I can see. I guess I'm so aware of men marrying women who may not necessarily be in their social class, which would sometimes include education, right? A lot of women aren't as educated as men are. Well, not these days. Back in the days when I was dating, that's kind of what it was. And I think it was in that moment that things were kind of flipping the other way around. I remember there was this guy that was interested in me, and he just did a lot of stupid things I could not for the life of me understand why stupid decisions were constantly being made. I couldn't. And then he would send me flowers to apologize for his stupid decisions. And it wasn't like he was like cheating, or it's just dumb stuff like driving. You don't have any gas because you don't for real have a job, or the job that you have, you're not making a whole bunch of money, but you're driving all over the place and you're doing all this stuff, and then you turn around and you don't have any money for gas, and then you want me to then drive to you an hour away after you made those dumb decisions? No, I can't. Like, I know it sounds super simple and super basic, but it was, to me, it was an indication that there was the more stupidity to come, and I just couldn't truly invest time into something like that, because I didn't want to waste his time, I didn't want to waste my time, and it just wasn't going to be it wasn't good fit. We were unequally yoked.
Well, I think, again, like I said earlier, those are kind of those external factors that people will say, well, they aren't a match on paper. Mm-hmm. Because I think with the problem that comes up a lot of times with those situations where it's a difference in social class, social status, financial status, education, is where people who are not in the situation directly, like two people may decide, this doesn't matter to us, we'll make it work. But then you've got friends, you got family, they're in there making their slick little comments, so they're putting pressure on. I mean, if you are a person you come from wealth and you're marrying someone who they would consider you to be marrying down or whatever, and they're like, okay, well, you got to protect the family's money, you need prenup, and those things are not impractical, but that can cause a strain on a relationship that didn't necessarily come from the two people in the relationship. I mean, you've you've got people, friends or people you went to school with, and they're like, well, this doesn't look right because you've done all this and achieved all this, and you're with this person who hasn't achieved as much. How will that look? How will that look to our social group? How will that look to people in the company we work for or whatever? So like it's kind of like this external thing where you have other people who aren't involved telling you why the situation will work, to the point where it becomes difficult to make the situation work because you've got so many external voices telling you this isn't the right thing to do.
Unfortunately, and it's something that we brought up before in one of our other videos, that family and outside influences, it can affect the relationship. But when it comes to, like you said, those foundational issues, so like faith or tithe or the way I feel about waste, we're gonna do this. I'm trying to figure out how we can do boom, 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 all together at the same time. Even when you think about food, how you cook it, how you, if we have turkey and you try and throw away the whole daggone turkey, I'm gonna be like, I don't know. So I'm very, mindful about like the way how much money you spend on things, and I don't want waste, because when I'm in a relationship, I go all the way in, and I don't want to be worried about decisions that are being made for us as a couple in a household if we're unequal. And I feel like when we're unequally yoked, that I would be worried. The way we think about money, finances, all of that stuff. When we think about purchasing a car, all this stuff these are important things to me, and I just can't leave those things to chance.
Well, it shouldn't come to that. I mean, you shouldn't. If you're unequally yoked and you knew it, then there shouldn't be a spouse.
But people, listen. There are so few men out here. I feel like a lot of women are getting themselves caught up in relationships and become emotionally invested in relationships where they are unequally yoked.
If you're married and you're unequally yoked, you have to live with it at that point.
Why do you feel? Why? That's interesting, because this is not the second time that you brought that up in videos that we've done. So why do you think that it's okay to be unhappy in a marriage?
Being unequally yoked is something that presents itself up front. You weren't duped into being unequally yoked with somebody. You made a conscious decision to blow through the stop sign. Alright, you didn't get your brakes checked, you just went on ahead and did it. So don't go and try to be like, oh, I'm unhappy. It's your own fault. So for me, as I keep saying, or as I said in the beginning and all the way through, being unequally yoked is something that presents itself early on. So, I mean, and I define it, again, as being something that's foundational. So, I know I talked a little bit about financial status, education level. To me, those aren't foundational because those are things that were attained. So, I mean, those are external factors that could matter if you have, family and friends who are prone to get involved in your relationship. But otherwise, if you know that you've seen something and you haven't gotten married, which you shouldn't have yet, that tells you that you two are unequally yoked, I would say don't ignore the voice, because it's only going to magnify itself more and more as time passes. So I would really think long and hard about going through with a relationship when you know pretty early on that you guys are unequally yoked at a foundational, fundamental level.
And my last thoughts about it, as a therapist and in seeing couples for counseling, there's a huge difference between foundational issues where you determine that you're unequally yoked and just like little things that you're being particular about. So, oh, he wear the wrong shoes, with this outfit, or, she don't pull her makeup on right, or her hair look a little bit of a mess. Those are like little situational things. Unequally yoked things are those foundational things that truly like affect the relationship kind of as a whole. So that's just my last 2 cents on the matter. Like you said, I piggyback on everything that you said about it. It's important to make sure that you listen to those gut thoughts and not make decisions out of desperation, and also do a little check on yourself. Make sure that you're not tripping. Make sure that you're being mature. You're making a mature decision.
Alright, that's it for us. Hope you like this video. Please like this content and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you later.
Bye.